We'll get
So
this.
we have StreamYard Premium now.
StreamYard Premium.
That's how you get the full 1080p.
Oh, well, that is
Otherwise,
nice. It's nice and
fuzzy,
clear.
other than the border.
Oh,
So other than
he complains about everything. You just got to get used to it. So I'm fairly used to it. So everybody, we're here with Pete Meier, MotorAge.
How you doing?
Man,
it doesn't say MotorAge on this little badge. So what's
It does. No, it's our parent company, Endeavor Business Media.
I need a parent company.
Oh Lord,
I need a.
We've had a few over the years.
So Pete, you do a lot of stuff with MotorAge. I'm always seeing your videos on YouTube and everywhere else. Tell us a little bit. I know what MotorAge is. I think most of our listeners know what MotorAge is. What's MotorAge? Though?
You know what? I think you'd be surprised. I started full time with the publication almost a dozen years ago now.
Right.
And I'll never forget when I would walk into an event, do a presentation, introduce myself as being with MotorAge, and having the guys in the audience go like, "Motor who?" And it always used to get me because MotorAge is the nation's oldest automotive trade publication. It was first published in 1899.
Wow, I did not know
we've been
that.
around ever since. And like I said, there's a lot of people that just still don't, even now, still don't know who we are. And that's okay. We'll get to them eventually.
That's it. That's it.
But that's like I said, the MotorAge is now part of a family in the Endeavor Business Media portfolio. We have now ABRN, which is a collision magazine. We have Aftermarket Business World, which is for the business of the business. P10 is now part of our group.
Oh, that's
Professional
cool.
Tool and Equipment News. And Professional Distributor, the guy who runs the tool truck. So any role that you or your listeners are playing in the automotive aftermarket, we've got you covered somewhere.
That's pretty cool. So you said this was your first time at ETI ToolTech.
It is.
What's your first thought when you come to this event and you see this? What's your number one thought, your number one takeaway? Because this is not like any of the other events we attend.
It isn't. And I actually got a chance to interview Brian Plott going into the event.
Right.
And as you know, this is their 75th anniversary, and you learn about some of their history and how this organization became the gateway, if you will, between the OEMs and the aftermarket, especially the tool companies, and now more critically, the diagnostic companies, the tool companies. So if anyone who's listening wants to know how they're getting that enhanced data for Ford, GM, BMW, wherever, it's passing through ETI. They guard the licenses and make sure that the right people get it and the wrong people don't. And keep that link between the OE and the aftermarket tool companies, keep that going. So.
Absolutely. Keep it healthy too,
yes.
Right? It's not just about having a connection there.
Yes.
It's that we're trying to blend both sides. And one of the things we talked about today in a previous podcast is really hearing the OE stand up there on stage today and say, listen, we're on your side. We're not against you. We're not trying to lock you out of the car. We're trying to work with you. And that was really interesting because we don't.
Not Mercedes, though.
Yes, not Mercedes.
Yeah, they definitely aren't on that stage.
And many others are not on that stage.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're doing business with ETI. There's their agreements just like they have with NASTIF.
Right.
Same type of agreements are in place, memorandums of understanding and all that other stuff.
Right.
But I think for the companies that were represented, I mean, Toyota has always, in my mind, been the leader in helping the aftermarket. They saw right off the bat that we want people to keep buying our brand so that people out in the aftermarket who work on them have to be able to have the tools to do that.
Right.
And they even went, I don't know if you were aware of this, but they even went so far as providing tech support, when you get the service subscription through Identifix.
Right.
And I'll never forget the story Mark Saxenberg was telling about, why they went that route, because, if you're a dealer, and I've worked in the dealerships, and you have a problem with a brand new car, you can call up factory helplines. And these are nothing but the rookie engineers manning the lines, right? So they can handle a year or two model year.
Right.
But after that, they have no idea. If you call them about a 10-year-old car, they have no idea what to do.
Right.
So Toyota recognized that. And he said, you know what? We're going to give you the same tech support we would give our dealers. So we're going to give you the subscription built in to our service information subscription. Right. And that's your tech support for the Toyota line. That's really going a step above and beyond in my mind.
Of what anybody else does. And I think Toyota really gets the golden award, right, for the
Yeah,
way the
Meier,
aftermarket
yeah.
should be treated for sure. Because I mean, and they want to communicate. They work with us, and I think they do a really good job for their consumers too. I
Yeah.
tell all my clients, if I'm going to buy a car, it's going to be a Toyota. That's
Yeah.
all there is to it.
And you just said something that's very, very important because that's the manufacturer. Most of them understand that.
Right.
They can build a perfect car, but if the tech can't fix it,
Yep.
he's not going to blame himself. He's going, well, that model that year was, and I worked for a guy like that. That model that year, they were all like that. They were all pieces of junk.
Right.
And the consumer's going to like, oh, if that's the case, I'm not going to buy brand X anymore. I'm going to go buy brand Y next time. And that's exactly what's going on, right? And GM understands that. Honda, the reps that were here today, and like you were mentioning, the panel understand that. There's some others though that don't.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it's a lot of undercurrent right now going on that any shop owner technician out there needs to be aware of. If it weren't for organizations like ETI and NASTF,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have access to the information that you
Absolutely.
have right now. You wouldn't have access to the factory tooling. Just get on social media and talk to techs who live in the UK, Australia, anywhere in the European Union. They do not have the access to the factory data that we have.
Right.
We're very, very lucky here. But if we don't keep tabs on it, we're not going to keep it.
Yeah.
A lot of things going on right now. In fact, you may be aware of it, but if your listeners aren't, they need to be. Currently in Congress is legislation called the Repair Act.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's in Congress, so this is not like Massachusetts where it's in one state and everybody has kind of agreed to it. But this is federal legislation, and I encourage them to do their homework and reach out to your representative. Let them know that you support legislation like this. This is what's going to protect your ability to take care of your customers down the road. And it's just one of the challenges that shop owners, technicians, professionals in the industry need to be more involved in.
Right. Well, and you brought up NASTF, right?
Mhm.
And as I posted about that yesterday, because I was posting, I shared your live stream of it, and we were talking a lot about the general session and talking about how important it is. And a lot of people didn't know what NASTF was.
Yeah.
And it's very important that they know. And a lot of people say, well, they add rules that make things more difficult on me. Well, they also add rules that make it possible for the aftermarket to coincide with manufacturers, for one, because they have certain measures they have to meet, right?
Right.
It's just part of it, right? And we live in a different world as far as security goes. And malware and access to automobiles is a big deal, especially if the car can drive itself or has lane keeping ability.
Right.
And so I think that's really important. But beyond that, I think, and before we started, we were talking a little bit about professionalism and the things that go on kind of behind the scenes in the industry as a whole.
Mhm.
Man, NASTF is really, in my opinion, what brings that professionalism to the table, to the point that eventually we have to become the professional. We have to have the insurance.
Right.
We have to have the credentials. We have to have the business license, or you're not going to be affiliated with a VSP. And
Yeah.
if you don't have a VSP, guess what that means? Eventually, it's going to be to the point you're not going to be working on the car. At least that, as bad as I hate to say it, that's my hope.
Yeah.
Because it leads us to a higher level of professionalism. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, the National Automotive Service Task Force, again, they are the mediator between the
Right.
OEMs and the aftermarket. In large part because of their efforts, we have the information that we have. And even now, they're kind of that, just like with ETI, they're the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And all the memorandums of understanding that came out of Right to Repair, the law in Massachusetts. And again, some of that's being challenged. And NASTF is working very hard to keep that status quo. We mentioned earlier Mercedes. And I encourage those who haven't seen it to either go to the recap I did last night on our social media and wherever you want to watch it, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, whatever, and watch that, because Mercedes hasn't, according to Donnie Seifer, executive director of NASTF, hasn't released any diagnostic updates since the 2009 model year.
That's correct.
And they're providing, the only way you can get in there with any kind of tooling is to have their tool, pay their subscription, 4-year minimum.
Yeah,
right?
Extremely expensive. I mean,
Extremely
it is
expensive.
not a cheap tool.
And if for some reason they wake up one morning and say, hey, they don't want you to have it anymore, they can pull the plug on you.
Yeah.
This is not what Right to Repair was all about.
Right.
So these are, like we were talking about earlier, these are things that NASTF does. And everybody, again, if you're listening to this podcast, go to www.nastf.org and join. It costs absolutely nothing. But you're putting your voice with thousands of others.
Yeah.
And that gives them a little more clout when it comes to dealing with the OEs.
Absolutely. And something else that's worth mentioning, those that have said, and in the past, we've heard some critical of NASTA, but I'm going to tell you right now, they sit in here and listen to what everybody had to say. And if I know you contacted Donnie, I've contacted Donnie, open ears, right? There's no doubt they're listening. They're trying to help, whatever it takes. If you're not a member of the organization and if you're not giving feedback, you don't really have room to talk.
Yeah. And nothing's perfect, right? I mean,
absolutely.
they're charged with, like, for example, the VSP. I know there's a lot of controversy with that with some shop owners right now.
Right.
And I get it. I understand that. But they have a responsibility also to the OEs. And as you pointed out, it all came out of the undesirable element in our society. They're using that or trying to use that information to rip people off.
Yeah.
So there has to be some way to prevent that from happening, especially when it comes to like key cutting. I mean, there's so many interesting ways that these guys have of getting those codes just walking by you when you have your smart key in your pocket, and they have a little device in their pocket that will pull that code right out, and they can go to the dealer and give them their VIN and pretend they're you, and next thing you know, they're coming back to your place with a key, and off they go.
Out of there.
So there's a lot of reasons. I understand the security reasons for that and the vetting process.
Definitely.
It's not easy, but we're looking kind of the same thing now with the scan data. I mean, just think of the secure gateway module on Chrysler products.
Right.
If you want to get past that, you have to go to autoauth.com and register your tools for a fee.
Yeah.
Right. And then you get vetted, and okay, now you can access that module.
Right.
But now Nissan's getting ready to do the same thing.
Right.
Who's going to do that? Who's going to take that fee? And God help you if you're working on every model line.
Oh,
how many fees you get to pay for 40 different manufacturers?
Exactly. And listen, I'm not even worried about the fee. I'm worried about having to remember the passwords and the logins and all these different things.
It should not have to be that complicated.
Exactly. And when I look at it, I think that's the perfect spot for NASTA. Right. Yeah. I think that's really
and ETI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 110%. 110%. You awake over there?
Oh, I don't care.
So, I think that is exactly point on. George Lesniak, George, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. He was actually my judge in the Max AC Technician of the Year contest back in 06.
Really? Really?
Yeah. No, I take that back. It wasn't like he was involved with that as well. But the first time I met George was at the last dealer or shop that I worked at. I worked for CarMax in Tampa. Mm-hmm. They had an internal program where they techs would compete against one another.
Right.
And I got to go to the national competition, and he and Chris Desney were my judges.
So, that is cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
I didn't win.
So George posted something. We were talking about EVs earlier.
Yes.
And he posted a really interesting comment, and he said that he's concerned that when we're talking about EVs and data access, hey, listen, I know they're saying they're providing the data for the internal combustion engine side of things. I get that. My biggest fear of EVs, are they going to continue to provide that data and that access? Because there's not a mandate that makes them provide that, is there?
Well, I mean, there kind of is.
Okay.
Again, Massachusetts, the right to repair came out of extending the requirement that EPA and CARB both set forth on anything emissions related. We know that is OBD2.
Right.
So when you have a global OBD2 scan tool, everything you look at as a tech is mandated by these organizations for the factories. So it doesn't matter if it's sold for the use in the United States, it's got to give you access to this, whether it's an Audi, Ford, Benz, whatever the case might be. They all have to have the same data access.
Right.
So the right to repair and then the memorandum of understanding kind of extended that to everything else on the vehicle as well. Now, the loophole, like you pointed out, is these are non-emissions vehicles. And that's what, like Tesla, for example, didn't have to do anything because they weren't producing any emissions. And now more EVs are coming along, same thing.
Right.
I think the factories that are already doing it will probably continue. Again, Toyota, I don't foresee where they would shut that off, or GM. GM's a big player in the EV market, as is Ford. I mean, I don't think they're going to shut that off. But again, if you're not involved, if you're listening, as we say down south, you got a dog in the hunt. you need to be on board. You need to be playing your part to protect your rights or ability to service that vehicle.
There's strength in numbers, right? Yeah. And when we're all involved with organizations like ETI, and I hear there's some really exciting news about that as far as shop owners go.
Yeah.
But when we're all involved with ETI and NASTF, it gives them the numbers to go back and argue for us and fight for us.
Sure.
And I know these guys, right? I know they're on our side. There's no doubt in my mind. This is not some, big evil corporation up here in the other corner that's working for dollars. I mean, these are organizations who are really fighting for us in the independent shops and even fleet shops, things like that. These guys are working for us.
Yeah. And it's the tool guys, right?
Yeah.
It's the tool companies and other players on the aftermarket side that need to work with the OEM platforms. I mean, imagine coming to like Snap-on or Autel or Launch, any of these diagnostic tool companies, and all of a sudden they're locked out of being able to provide the information you want in their enhanced modes, right?
Right.
You pay to have that subscription, you expect it to do what you need it to do. But if they're not giving that information to begin with or access to that to begin with, then they can't provide that to you. And that only hurts them. They don't want that any more than we do.
Exactly. Absolutely. 110%. And one of the things that I think we would be remiss if we didn't bring up is sitting here before we came on, we were talking about the industry as a whole and what a lot of people have to say about it. And a lot of people can be frustrated and aggravated and the whole 9 yards. But you said something that I've thought for a long time. Look, you can talk about it all you want, but if you're not doing anything about it, there's no sense in continuing to talk about it.
Yeah.
Tell us how you really feel.
Well, I mean, it's, I know we like to paint a picture in our own minds and out to the public of our professionalism. And there are certainly a lot of shop owners and technicians who fit that bill to a T. But there are 750,000 men and women just in the mechanical repair side of our industry.
Yeah.
And let's be real with one another. They're not all on the same page. Now, we talked about before, way back several years ago, we had the first Auto Mechanica event that we did with Auto Mechanica Frankfurt. And we had a training event as part of that. And we did something kind of unique. I've always professed, since I've been with the magazine and coming from a technician background, that I know techs want the information. I know they know they need to have it. They want to be better than what they are today, but they don't always know where those resources are or can afford them. So I said, let's try to make this. Let's go to our clients, our advertisers, and say, look, we want you to foot the bill,
right? So
that we can make this training available to the men and women who need it at no cost to them.
Right.
Let's just give them a chance to experience what real training is all about.
Right.
And we had some of the biggest names in the industry. If you go on any training event, you've heard the names of Thornton and Manna, and Bernie Thompson, Trulia. These are all the big guns, names, right?
Right.
But when we went to this event, nobody cared. Right. In fact, many people didn't. I mean, John Thornton, pack house and Vision,
right?
But here is like my guys didn't even have a name yet. They were putting more people in the classroom because of the topic, the subject that the people were looking at. They'd never been.
Right.
So they didn't know who he was.
Right.
And this was in Chicago. This is his hometown.
Yeah.
Right?
And they didn't even know
and they had
who
no
he
idea
was.
who he or any of the other guys, Manna or Xanders or any of the guys were.
Right.
So anyway, we found that the people who did come out were by far some of the most excited and involved, engaged students of any training event that a lot of our instructors had ever been to.
Right.
They almost commented to a man how eager they were to learn, how many questions they were asked. They didn't want to take a break. They didn't want to leave after class was over. And in between classes, you could feel the energy in the air.
Right.
Of guys who were really going like, wow, this is what it means to go to that next level. And I think most techs want to do that. I think so, like we were talking about, out of the 750,000 men and women, maybe 10, 15% are the big guns, the ones that we see at all the events, the ones who are the Brandon Stecklers of the world, and guys like him. Right. And then you probably got another 10 or 15% on the bottom that I think I would love to run out of town on a rail.
Yep.
I don't think they belong in the business. I wouldn't let them change the oil in my lawnmower.
I agree.
And I think they need to go. But I think that 70% in the middle, they want to be better than they are, but they need the help to get there. They need the resources.
Right.
And we also talked about the what I always thought was the apathy among technicians for training, because I saw it in the shop that I used to work in. When training was available, most guys didn't want to go, didn't want to stay after work to do that.
Right.
But I don't think it's the techs. And if you're a shop owner listening, listen close. You are the one who sets the culture in your business. You have to set that culture of continuing education, that it's not a maybe. If you want to be working for us,
right,
then you have to continuously be improving, going to get training, going to get that education, and we're going to help you do it.
Yep.
That's the big factor. We'll help you do it.
Exactly.
And it's like Jim Warren always says, training doesn't cost, it pays.
Exactly.
And we're seeing more, I think we're seeing more shop owners take that to heart. They're saying, and you have to. Today's technology, like we talked, EVs coming, ADAS was a big topic here and has been for some time. These are things that back in the old days you could get kind of close and be close enough. Not anymore, buddy.
No.
You fix a car now, it's got to be either right or it's wrong. There's no in between anymore.
Right. You're exactly right. And that's kind of the vision of ASOG is our vision is to create hunger for training. And one of the things that we've seen, and we talked about this a little bit, one of the things we've seen is we've got a lot of technicians who have turned into shop owners. And I support that 110%.
Oh, yeah.
It's the American dream, owning your own business, right? I think that's great. Understand that the job of owning a shop is not the same job as fixing the cars.
Yeah.
Right. You got to learn to be a business owner. If you want to own a business, that's great. We'll support you. We'll do whatever we can to help you.
Absolutely.
But you got to understand what that job is, because the problem that we see, and David talks about this sometimes, the problem that we see is this proverbial cycle that goes around and around because, he's being paid flat rate. It's not fair. The boss is a jerk. The boss is stressed out. We've got too much work or not enough work or one thing or another. I'm just going to go work for myself. And then what happens? Well, he ends up starting a shop, and then he gets in the same situation as that last owner. And now we're burning through technicians in this constant cycle where it's going around and around.
Yeah.
Whereas if we can educate the shop owner to make sure the tech's paid fairly, to make sure he's got the benefits and the resources he needs, to make sure he's got the training he needs, and we get the shop owner the training to make sure he's living a good life. I mean, what's the point of owning a shop if it's going to be a job? You might as well just go get a dang job if you're going to do that.
Well, the only thing is that you don't know what you don't know.
Amen.
Right? And a flat rate tech, and I was that for years. That was my entire career as commission or flat rate. That's one of the few jobs where you're basically an independent businessman. You're a contractor.
Yeah.
But you have no control over advertising, sales, rates, any of that.
Right.
You're just kind of left taking whatever flows down to you, right? And that's not easy. But as you pointed out, if you're going to step out to take on that half, to not approach it the same way you did with your technical training, to get the education you need to run a business, then you're just going to be you're going to be a flat rate tech, only now your name's on the lease.
Exactly. You take all the liability.
It's not going to change. Right. So you have to do that. And like we spoke before, I've met a lot of guys who are tremendous technicians, but because they didn't get the education of running a business, they weren't successful.
Right.
And then I've met guys who knew absolutely nothing about cars, but they knew how to run a business, and they're multi-shop owners, and they're raking in a fortune.
Exactly. Exactly. And here's the deal is that I think that a lot of shop owners, especially the ones that were techs turned owners, think that profit is a dirty word. Right. Profit is the purpose of business. Right. And if we lose sight of that, we're in trouble, because the business has got to generate a profit. And if it does generate a profit, then it can pay its people appropriately.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's so much of the key. We've got a lot of independent shops out here. And I will be the first to say, I talk to a lot of them, and I talk to a lot of techs from those shops. A lot of them aren't paying fairly. Now, there's a lot that are. I'm not saying they all are, but a lot of those shops aren't paying fairly, and they're not offering the benefits that they should or could. I think that's where it starts, is the owner becoming educated.
Yeah, and shop owners consider that right now we're in a tremendous shortage of technicians. We've been talking about that since I've been in the business. Yeah. But because nothing's changed, right, which is a whole other topic we were talking about.
Yeah,
it's starting to get to a boiling point. And when technicians come to me and say, "Well, Pete, these guys won't support my training. They won't give me the time off, let alone pay for it," that kind of thing.
Right.
I'll be honest with you, shop owners. I tell them, go somewhere else.
Exactly.
There are enough shops out there
Same here.
Who will mentor you, will help you grow, will support you, have that culture.
Yeah.
And they're probably right in your hometown waiting for you to show up and apply. So if you're decent with a wrench and you're decent especially if you're a decent diagnostician who knows how to find a problem and fix it right the first time. There's a shop out there that's willing to grab onto you and pay you what you're worth.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you've seen me at 5 or 6 trade shows over the past couple of years where I've got the whole team in tow behind me. Let's go. You know?
Absolutely.
And I think that's the key is we have to start training our team. And here's my deal with that training. You know, I think I saw you at Vision, and did you go to STX?
I did.
I think I saw you at STX, but you didn't have to fly out of STX, so you didn't see us all in one place. But you know, people say, how can you afford to take your whole team to somewhere like STX? It's the culture. It's not just about the training alone. It's that we're working as a team and growing as a team and developing a culture that we all know that we're doing what's best for each other. Right.
Yeah.
And so culture is so important in business, but especially when it comes to these training events, that's where the culture starts. Right. When guys are getting out and look, I've had my guys say some things to me that didn't exactly feel nice at these training events because they felt safe. They felt like it wasn't at work. They felt like they had the authority to say something, say, hey man, I'm really concerned about this.
Yeah.
I would have never known that. Right. Some of those things I would have never even thought about.
Right.
And they come up and they feel comfortable enough to say that to me. That's really important.
You bet it is. I mean, when you think about it, all the business training gurus in the business will all tell you the same thing. You're not going to get anywhere if your team isn't buying into your goals and ambitions. Yep. They're not just employees. Don't treat them like a cog in the wheel, in the machine. And I mean, too many companies do that. You know, and the cog breaks, throw it out, put a new one in. Well, you know what? You can't find those new gears anymore.
Exactly.
So you got to take care of the machinery you got. And that means that you have to listen and encourage them to participate, in what you're doing and let them know, what your vision is, where you're going, where you stand as a business, as a team. Oh, we did great last week. We blew these numbers out of the water. Let's see if we can't nudge it up a bit next week. And if they're in some pay plan that's going to support that, and it doesn't have to be always cash. A lot of people, you need to make a living. But now I'm going to tell you, any shop that I've ever left, I've never left because I didn't like the boss or I didn't like the shop or the coworkers or anything like that. Bottom line was I couldn't make my bills.
Right.
And then I had no choice but to go. So if you're paying a decent living wage, to your techs, then the other thing they want is to feel like they're part of something, that they matter, that they contribute. And then when you do something good, how many times somebody makes a mistake and you call them to the carpet for it? Right. But when they do something great, it's never recognized. People want to know, hey, you did a great job in the company. Mrs. Smith was just absolutely tickled to death that you got her car back done, fixed and right the day early. You know what I mean? That's all part of it. It's all part of it.
Well, my shop coach always tells me, he says, put 5 quarters in one pocket in the morning. And by the end of the day, every time you tell somebody how they did a good job or you praise them and you're telling them you're proud of them, move a quarter to the other pocket. They all better be in the other pocket by the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a great thing to think about.
And, we've got to reward them. We've got to show them we care. And there was a business coach a while back and I sat through one of his classes and he said, listen, you're building a business, not a family. And I couldn't help but think if I was a technician or if I was an employee of a business that said that, man, that wouldn't feel very nice.
No.
And maybe it doesn't have to be a family, but the fact is that it's more than just a business, right? It's more than we have a relationship as coworkers and we spend more time together as coworkers than we do with our own family, right? In many cases, if I'm just a number to you, man, come on now.
Well, I mean, if you're a shop owner and you want to be a successful shop owner, then you have to have a team behind you that's going to help get you there.
Right.
So in other words, you got to make sure that they're successful.
Yep.
Their success breeds your success.
Amen.
And if you're not looking out for that, do you have to take them home and feed them dinner? That's up to you.
Right.
That's up to the individual, to decide that for themselves. But you can't make it without them.
Exactly.
Right. So
exactly.
It was an old saying, who would be first was first must be the servant of many.
That's it.
That's it.
Absolutely.
You got to take care of your people. They'll take care of you.
Yes, sir. And I tell my people all the time, I said, look, I've got a desired outcome. I want my clients' vehicles properly and safely repaired. I want the vehicle to be safe and reliable for them and their family.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my desired outcomes. My other desired outcome is I want to be an advocate for our client. Right. And I said, that's your desired outcomes. And they said, well, what's your desired outcome? My desired outcome is I want to take really good care of y'all So you know what it's like, what I expect for you to take care of them, right? I want to convey to you through the way that I treat you, how I want you to treat them, right? And that's how I want it to come across.
Yeah.
I want us to be doing what's right for our clients, but I want us to be doing what's right for our people too.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Pete, in closing statements, what do you want shop owners, technicians, service advisors to hear? What's the one message you would say is the most important out of whether it's coming to ETI and the NASTF general session or just in general? What's the?
I think one of the things that we easily can lose oversight of, we treat it like a job, and then we're getting greasy and we're breaking our backs, and it's sometimes it's a physical job, sometimes it's a demanding job. But one of the things I always try to encourage the readers in the audience that I speak to consider is that first and foremost, we have an ethical responsibility to our customers to provide them with the absolute best that we can based on our experience and our training to not only help them take care of their vehicle, but to ensure the safety of their families.
Amen.
So when you're working on that car, even if you're just doing an oil change, look for the little things that do a glance over. Would you want your mom, your wife, or your daughter to drive that car home without knowing something that you should be telling them?
Exactly.
And today, with all the electronic systems on the car, it's not just a visual inspection anymore. I think in my mind, every vehicle that comes into your shop should get a pre-scan.
I agree.
I don't care if it's in for an oil change, so that you can give that report to your customer and say, hey, look, we found this. It's not a big deal right now. Let's put it on your list. Make sure you know.
Yeah.
It's always better to tell them rather than have them tell you.
Absolutely.
Right? So
that's a fact. And I think that's great advice. And it's something that so many of us overlook from time to time. We get so focused on getting the car out the door that we lose sight of why we're getting the car out the door. So Pete Meier, thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate the invite, Lucas. Thank you.
Yes, sir.